from Saif al-Islam on Sunday, where he appeared to have essentially chosen his father over his principles of reform. And that was extremely shocking, since he'd put his head above the parapet for many years now as a reformer, as an advocate of democracy and of human rights. And he seemed to be backpedaling and essentially backing his father's overwhelmingly disproportional response to the protests in Benghazi. So I don't know that we've heard the last from him, because he's of course the one safety valve that Gaddafi has left, which would be to put Saif al-Islam to the fore and to table some sort of genuine reform movement. But I do believe that the sell-by date for that has passed. I think we may hear something from Saif al-Islam in a last-ditch attempt, perhaps, in the coming days. But I don't know that ordinary Libyans are going to accept that at this stage.
What about the son that you mentioned at the outset of the program, Khamis? Where does he fit into this?
Yeah. Well, he's the younger son. He's about my age. He's been known as a rising star within the security forces. And as I mentioned, he is said to command his own brigade, a highly loyal and very well-trained brigade of ideologically committed individuals. So I think that we can assume that he'd be making some sort of last stand with his father, and that he's someone that his father would very much rely on. Because let's not forget, while Saif al-Islam was very much touted as his father's successor, ago that changed, and Khamis seemed to be the rising star within the Gaddafi family.
Rashid, let's talk for a moment about foreign hired forces used by Gaddafi, the so-called mercenaries. Now, they're playing a key and it looks like a very brutal role in suppressing these protests. We understand they're mainly from Chad and Niger, but they could be from other countries as well, in West Africa as well as East Africa. Some of them are believed to be from Sudan as well. They, of course, will be motivated purely by money, so I would imagine it would be very difficult to persuade them to change sides in this. So ultimately, do they hold power in Libya at this stage?
Unfortunately, no, they don't. The unfortunate happened in Libya is, this is how it tells you that Libya is united. So he has to go and find these, I don't know what to call them, but and they killed just cold-blooded all Libyans. This is Gaddafi. This is his dream. This is the one. He's crazy. He thinks like he's gonna be the one. He owns the world. Basically, he got these people, bring them all the way to Libya to kill Libyans, and he's naming himself the King of Africa or King of the Kings. Or these people, they will be arrested soon, and in Libya, it will be very clear. The unfortunate part, this has happened, and the only things that I wish from the international, all the international countries, especially the United Kingdom and United States, at least to put on bargain. Let's to watch all these planes that had actually landed in Maitiga airport and bringing these militias down there.
Okay. Faraj Najam, as Rashid pointed out there, the recruitment of these mercenaries was part of a very deliberate strategy by Colonel Gaddafi. It's not something that started last week or a month ago. In fact, this started many years ago in the 1980s. When did it begin, and how large a force of mercenaries does the Colonel have?
Well, we don't know the exact size and the nature of such recruitment, but one thing that we're aware of, that this is part of the investment network that Gaddafi has extended all over the world. He's been going to Africa and he's been offering all sorts of investments and money and so on to these despotic, often African leaders in return for all sorts of loyalties, you know, sometimes for political conversion to Islam, loyalty to Africa. And this network, it does not just stop with Africa. It goes beyond this. I think it goes to Latin America, Asia, and Europe as well. We understand that some of these core elites were trained, ironically, in Pakistan as well as in India in the same time. So Gaddafi has used the wealth that he has at his disposal to make sure that these people are loyal, well-funded, and are ready when they are called upon. And that's what has happened.
Aliyah Brahimi, I want to turn now to tribal affiliations in Libya and how these pockets of power play out and what is going on right now. You made a statement not so long ago in which you said that in Libya it will be the tribal system that will hold the balance of power, not the military. Tell us more about that.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't overemphasize the tribal element. I mean, yeah, I'll just clarify that now. But in actual fact, Gaddafi has tended to perpetuate his rule through a strategy of divide and rule among the tribes, but also within them. And I think, you know, various power centers are defined tribally. That can't be denied. But in actual fact, it's almost in opposition to any unified sort of armed forces. Because as I say, we don't have the same situation where there's a robust armed forces under responsible command and indeed unified command that can actually defect. In actual fact, what we have is a deliberately fragmented and dispersed armed forces and then a series of overlapping militias overriding those in a sense. So the situation is very, very different from the situation we saw in both Egypt and Tunisia.
For Najam, as Aliyah points out there, we shouldn't be overemphasizing the role that tribes play in Libya. But during that speech that Colonel Gaddafi made on television on Tuesday night, I mean, he did make a point of saying that in Libya, all tribes support him. He said, all tribes support me. Was he being a little bit delusional there?
Absolutely. Tribes are not going to be a major feature in future Libya. We know from history, and this is from a research I conducted myself, that whenever we have state institutions, we have the rule of law, and we have some sort of justice, economically, socially, and so on, tribes tend to take a second seat, back seat, and they don't play any role in the running of the affairs of the state. But Gaddafi, at this point, he's trying to rally the tribes because he has lost everything, but he has forgotten that he has lost the tribes as well. I mean, you've had all the tribes, starting from the tribes of the East, who were instrumental in dislodging the Italians and the Germans for the benefit of the Allies in World War II, and helping to establish the Emirates and then the Kingdom of Libya, to the tribes in the south who were with the French, dislodging the Italians again and the Germans from the south, but also importantly the tribes of the west, namely Warfalla, Tarhuna, Misrata, and so on and so forth. And those tribes have come out publicly and made it very clear that Gaddafi, goodbye, we don't want you.
There is one other card that tribal leaders could play, Rashid, and that is the control they have over the flow of oil. Last Sunday, the leader of the AlJazeera tribe, which is in the east, threatened to stop the flow of oil to the western part of the country unless the attacks on the protesters stopped. Is it likely that this, if they do stop the oil, that it would perhaps change the behavior of Colonel Gaddafi in Tripoli?
I don't think so. Now, Zwaya, yes, they did, but changing the behavior of Gaddafi, no, that's definitely not. And I'm here on as Dr. Faraj, and of course he's very expert on this, and I read most of his book, and he's very did a very good job on the research about the tribes in Libya and more.